I've worked with many celebrities: Charlotte Tilbury, Taraji P, Henson, Drew Barrymore, Ashley Tisdale, Mindy McKnight.
Why do you think most celebrity brands fail?
When the brands are created, they have to have a real lifestyle point of view or solve a real consumer need that really differentiate the founders and the celebrities that are successful.
Today, I'm in community with Oshiya Savur. She's a business leader and brand builder shaping how brands connect with people. She's led teams, owned P&Ls, and partnered with celebrities to turn personal vision into brands that scale. In this conversation, she talks about trust, long-term relationships, and what it really takes to build something that lasts.
Building a community is hard. It takes a lot of hidden trial to see what your community cares about. And if anybody says they know how to do it and can do it for you in a second, is likely lying.
How do you actually make sure that you're keeping things growing after initial hype?
It's often a cycle that we go through, the leaky bucket syndrome, as it's called.
If you had to reduce everything you've learned over the years to one really key principle, what do you think that would be? This episode is sponsored by Now This. Before we get into the episode, I'd really appreciate if you take a second to hit subscribe now. Every subscriber matters and helps the show have an opportunity to grow and reach more people. Plus, you'll be the first to hear about what else is coming your way. Thanks for being here. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. This is In Community with Fahad. Oshiya Savur, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Fahad. It's so exciting to be here.
I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to ask for you to actually take me back to the beginning. Tell me about one of your earliest memories.
My earliest memory actually is from kindergarten. And I was the lead actor in a Red Riding Hood skit that my school put up. All right. So I, have like this distinct memory, and I don't know if it's a real one or not, and maybe it formed later on when I saw a picture of myself dressed in a Red Riding Hood outfit. But I remember there were kids who were trees, they had like cardboard cutouts and they were standing, and that was the forest. And then I had to do hoppity hop around the trees because I'm Red Riding Hood waiting to be eaten by the wolf. Right. So now I've like gone around the trees twice. And the audience is wondering, why is this Red Riding Hood aimlessly continues to hip hop around? And I'm actually genuinely waiting for the wolf, because the wolf was supposed to be arriving in the second round that I was going to go around the trees. And the wolf is nowhere to be found. And so there is like a full-blown crisis. Where's the wolf, right? In the meantime, poor May is just like going around the trees in the third time around. And then we found that the wolf had just gone off to sleep. I think poor kid was just tired, napping in the backstage. So he was woken up, given some water to drink, and then was just sent back. And then we went on with our play. But it was like the cutest. I could really remember that moment where the wolf was brought back and we had to continue on with this kid. But the whole thing was just precious in a way, now that I think about it. And my mom, she was sitting there, and she's a young mom. She was probably, in her 20s still, and she was pregnant with my sister at the time. And I think seeing me act made her so happy that she went into labor at the end of that whole play. And my sister was born at the end of that day. And it was so fun because I love my baby sister, and who's 38 now, by the way, and I still call her my baby sister. But yeah, it was like the most precious gift that came out of it.
Wow. Okay, that is not where I expected that story
I know.
to go.
I told you I surprised you. I was like a very cute story.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it was a rude awakening for the little wolf, but it was a completely different awakening for your sister. That's amazing.
I know. She came to life because of my Red Riding Hood drama.
100%. Yeah, you made it happen. So tell me a little more about the community where you grew up. Where did you grow up? And tell me a bit about what that vibe and what the people and the surroundings were like.
Yeah. So I grew up in India my whole life. Yeah. I had no thoughts or ideas or plans that I was ever going to be living in America. It's just such serendipitous ways of how I got here. But yeah, I grew up. My mom was a teacher growing up, and now she's an administrator and whatnot. But when we were growing up, she was a teacher, very strict teacher at that. She refuses that now, has completely forgotten about it. She's like, I was so liberal, I was so nice. I was like, no, you were very strict. And my dad, who worked for nonprofit, so it was very much a values-based, principles-based kind of upbringing. We good old, like, middle class values, work hard and give back to the community when you can, and, just surrounded by family and friends and so on. But apart from this idyllic environment that I'm painting right now, Indian society, as Fahad, you would agree, much like Pakistan, is a very patriarchal society. And for as long as I can remember, when people would hear that I had only one younger sister and no brothers, they would often ask, well, are your parents considering a third sibling? Yeah, it was a very common question. Sometimes, even when I was in my 20s, way out of college, people would ask, well, are your parents considering? I'm like, I am 22. How old do you think my mom is? No, they're not considering. What is wrong with you, right? So, but I think that sort of in a way painted our childhood a bit too. And our parents were very progressive, even for those times and even now. And for them, it was very important that our girls were going to be able to achieve everything the boys were supposed to achieve. So very young age, they pushed us to stand up for ourselves, be assertive, have good communication skills, but importantly, the value of money and how to make it. My earliest memory of making money is probably when I was 11 or 12 during summer breaks. So my sister and I used to love to dance. My mom's side of the family is great on dancing. So we were born with the dance gene, and I guess a lot of Indian people can dance. So my sister and I started to give dance classes during summer break. We would charge, like, now it won't even convert to US dollars. It was like 20 rupees per dance that we would teach. And we would go from Bollywood songs to Bollywood songs. And we would have all these young kids whose parents were just like, please take my children away for a couple of hours, right? Teach them whatever you can. And we used to make a pretty nice chunk of money. And we, over the years, became pretty popular as the Vait sisters who were teaching dance. So for a few years, we did that in our teens. So I think those are my early memories of very progressive parents, very values based, and kind of still very strict and wanting to teach us, how to win in life.
Since then, obviously, a lot has happened. You eventually made the move to the US. You've built a whole career here. You've been a marketer and a leader in a number of different companies. And, in particular, I want to start getting into a bit around that journey and what that journey has looked like for you. And in particular, I want to actually start with the fact that you've now actually spent a few years working with brands that are in the beauty space, and particularly some that have been celebrity brands.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hoping you could tell me a little bit about is, why do you think most celebrity brands fail?
Ooh, that's a hard question because I'd like to say a lot of them succeed. I've worked with many celebrities at this point in time: Charlotte Tilbury, Taraji P, Henson, Drew Barrymore, Ashley Tisdale, Mindy McKnight. So it's a long list of celebrities that I worked with, and quite honestly, each have had their own strengths, their own ways of how they wanted to build a brand, and they often do come in. Especially, I think there's a bit of a switch, right? Like back in the day when I was just starting my career, there was this whole licensing model that existed, right? And the celebrities would be licensing their names. There were other companies that were running their businesses for them. They would be available for a shoot. There was no social media at the time, right? So there was no content being generated outside of the shoot. They would lend their faces and their likeness for the print ads, TV ads, and you just run it and you pay them a 6% royalty in return for using their name, right? But fast forward now, a celebrity has to do a lot more, right? They have to have a real lifestyle point of view and or solve a real consumer need, right? Because nobody's buying it just because a celebrity is endorsing it. There needs to be real problem solution, right? For instance, for the Drew Barrymore brand, it was all about beauty for real life, right? For Charlotte Tilbury, it was all about Hollywood glamour that could be accessible to anybody, right? At a fairly affordable price compared to what a red carpet look would cost, right? Similarly for Ashley Tisdale, it was all about wellness and the journey that she had, and therefore the promise that she was making, and so on. And Taraji too, a beautiful story about how she could not find the products that were good for her because she was putting her hair through so much through the movies and the productions that she was doing. And then she actually started to create products at home by herself. And then over time, as she was starting to parse off the samples to different people, she realized that actually might there be a business opportunity here for a wider consumer base who would actually benefit from the products that she was herself making in the kitchen. So that then became the inspiration for the products that we launched, right? So I would say, yes, celebrity brands fail. But when the brands are created on a real consumer need, when the celebrities are really willing to put in the effort and utilize their media channel for what it's worth. It shouldn't be just, oh, I'm contracted to do one post a month and I've done it and I've done my job. No, you have to go over and above to really tell the consumer why you care about this brand, what is the purpose of it, and consistently speak of it. Those are some of the things that really differentiate the founders and the celebrities that are successful.
When it comes to celebrity brands or brands that are really leveraging celebrities in that way, what do you think the role is of the trust that they've built, either with an existing audience or with the people who are going to be using the products that they've lent their name to?
I think it's very important, right? The world goes about on trust, and trust is actually the most endangered species of our time right now, I feel, right? Like with AI deepfakes, you don't know. Oftentimes, when I'm looking at social media posts right now, I sometimes don't know whether I'm looking at the real thing. Did it really happen or did it not happen, right? Especially around the news and everything. So absolutely, trust is very important. But I think more than trust, it's also authenticity of what they are pushing, right? Because an endorsement is an endorsement, and a lot of celebrities do a lot of things outside of the brand that they're posting, but I think the authenticity of what they are pushing out there as their own brand and why it's not just a money grab is extremely important.
What do you think happens when maybe a fan realizes that that particular brand of the celebrity that they're a fan of might not be for them?
Well, that's fine. That's fine because, one thing that is very surprising about the celebrity business, you would think that 100% of the sales of a brand are coming from the celebrity pushing the brand, but it's actually not true. When you look at actually the user footprint of the brands, and a lot of the brands that have a wholesale footprint, oftentimes, even if the celebrity's name is on the packaging, consumer is buying the product because they discovered it in store, they like the product, and they want to buy it. Right. So I would say that in some of the businesses I've seen, a founder may have driven 10% of awareness for the brand to maybe 40, 50%. But a huge part of it still comes from retailer exposures through the rest of the marketing you do, the influencers, the UGC, the social media that you put out there. It still takes the whole engine, to be successful as a brand.
Obviously, you've built and nurtured those engines at the various companies
Yeah.
you've worked, and you've really built communities as opposed to just
Mhm.
audiences. So I'm curious, how is real community different than fandom?
Because I think fans are for the celebrity, right? They care about the talent and the art that they're offering, right? Community is centered around a principle or a value or a brand that they're buying, right? So I think it's a bit different. I think communities are value based versus fandom is, oh, I like that person, I like their performance, I want to go to a concert, but it's not necessarily always about value. It could be about art. How many times have we tried to separate art from the artist? Right? You still love the song, but you don't like what the artist actually stands for, and oftentimes when you look back to a lot of the artists that I have actually idolized over the years have then been exposed for things that you wouldn't imagine they could do, right? And then you try to separate the art from the artist. I do think that the fandom is for the art and the artist versus community is around a shared value and a belief. And especially there's a brand associated with it. There is some aspect of conversion that comes with it, which is trial of the product itself.
And I think actually what you're talking about right now gets to my next question, which is what behaviors from those customers or those consumers tell you that a brand really does have a community?
I think it shows up in how your social media interactions go. It's about finding those one-on-one connection moments, not only from social media, when you're sending out your emails, what are people saying? It shows up in the wait list that you're generating when you're doing limited edition launches, right? So when at Charlotte Tilbury, we would launch exclusively at our direct-to-consumer channels before anything would launch at our wholesale partners. And you could sense the excitement because we would sometimes have 70,000 people who've signed up. Like we would not even have enough production units to supply for it, right? Or a new launch that's coming up and you've generated so much buzz about it and that people want to be there and want to participate in that, right? So that's when you know it's an engaging community. You ask a question, pat comes the answer, right? Like it's when you, so that's when they're actually engaging. They're part of it. They want to know. They want to root for you as a brand more than just the product.
What do you think brands should do after the launch moment? For just a launch, a wait
Yes.
list that big? I mean,
Yes.
that's truly massive.
Massive.
What happens though after that launch moment? How do you actually make sure that you're keeping things growing after the initial hype period fades?
How I think about it is whether it's so I think about our launches in two ways. One is either it's supporting your core franchise, right? So there's as you know, Fahad, you've been in CPG marketing for a very long time. Generally speaking, it's 80-20. Sometimes it's 60-40, depending on the brand. 60 towards the core business, that's your replenishment business that's just coming in and out, in and out, and then you've got the 40%, right? And oftentimes what happens is when you only start focusing on your innovation and not enough about your core, that your core starts to decay, and then amount of innovations you're launching is simply not enough to offset the decay, and the overall brand then starts to decline. Right? It's often a cycle that we go through, right? The leaky bucket syndrome, as it's called. But what I find is really works is when you have launches that are full core. So there's always a reanimation moment that comes through, and you never walk away from that reanimation moment. You keep coming back to it year after year, and whatever channels you can use, you're doing that. And then you've got your equity drivers, your buzz drops, things that create that momentum, and you want that to be sold. But that's it. Like it's a limited edition moment. It's purely only relevant for the holidays. It really doesn't have a life outside of it. That's fine, right? But I think it's almost like creating, but then also sustain moments. Now you've got all these new users acquired into your business. Now what do you do? Right? So the role of each of that is different. So, okay, now you've got them in. Now, how do you get them to try the rest of the brand? And then you have your own strategies for what's the gateway drug to your brand, what's the lowest price item that this person would like to try. And then you start tapping into them with their email marketing and social media marketing. And then you see once, and Charlotte and Ashley Tisdale's being French, some of these brands are just so powerful and the product's so good. You give the people one product and they taste it and then like, oh, that is actually really good. I'm going to try something else and then something else. And before you know, you've built the basket.
And beauty is really personal, right? I
Beauty's
mean, it's
better.
something that you're putting on your skin,
Yeah.
on your body.
Now,
Do you think that changes the way that we should be thinking about things when we're leading brands, or is it similar to, other products out there or other categories?
I think one would say everything's personal, right? Food is personal, wellness is personal, everything's personal, right? I think any marketing we put out there has to be consumer centered. I mean, it's sounding like a cliche at this point in time, but if you're not consumer centered, if you're not personalizing your message in this day and age, you're not winning, So I think it goes without saying.
What do you think is the most overrated advice when it comes to building community as a brand? This episode is sponsored by Now This. Make your brand part of Gen Z culture with Now This, a Gen Z-driven, social-first entertainment brand reaching 92 million followers and generating hundreds of millions of monthly views. They build franchises with staying power, shows made to be paused on, talked about, and shared. With a predominantly women 18 to 34 audience, they create culture-forward content that blends humor, honesty, and real-life relevance.
Building a community is hard. It doesn't happen easily. And it takes a lot of hidden trial to see what your community cares about, what makes them keep coming back. Oftentimes, actually, it's pretty hard because as a brand, you're very tempted to always be talking about yourself, right? But actually, nobody wants to go to a party and only hear about you, right? You want to sometimes ask what you care about others too at this party. So I think it's hard. I don't know if it's a good answer to an overrated advice, but I'll tell you that is community building is not easy. It's one that's very hard and it takes a lot of hit and try it. And if anybody says they know how to do it and can do it for you in a second is likely lying, because there's no real way to do it except for hit and trying and figuring out what works.
What would you say that is your superpower?
My superpower is to find the root cause. So oftentimes
to find the root cause
of anything that's happening. Yeah,
anything.
whether we're succeeding or we're failing, right? Oftentimes I find that people react to the outputs that we see. Oh, our sales are up or our sales are down, and then you're running after that. But oftentimes the issue is a lot deeper, and it doesn't come after the first why or even the second why. You have to keep digging till you can't dig any further, and you've got to the bottom of the actual issue or the drive. So I say that finding the root cause is probably my superpower. But other than that, I would say constantly reinventing is another one. to not take no for an answer, to look for a way to reinvent when you can, looking at all opportunities.
If you had to reduce everything you've learned over the years to one really key principle, what do you think that would be?
Never settle.
Never settle.
Yeah.
Why?
Never settle for yourself. I think one must always have a North Star, right? And the North Star may be defined, but how you get there, the journey of that North Star could be very different for different people, right? Don't let the circumstances tell you that that North Star can't be achieved. Certainly don't let other people tell you that that North Star cannot be achieved, right? Like, you find your ways through it if you're determined enough, right? So don't settle. Don't settle easily. Don't take the easiest answer and say, oh, it's not for me, right? But then it's almost like you want to make sure that you have the big vision for yourself, the North Star for yourself, for your business too, for your business, for your brands, for yourself. There is a vision that you have, which is pretty clear. How you get there requires a fair amount of flexibility, because I tell you, all the good things that have happened in my life are not the things I planned. In fact, I utterly cried at every single failure I had in my life, but that failure led to an amazing opportunity on the other end. And that became the reason why it was a turning point and led me to where I am. So I think flexibility along the way is very important.
What do you think most people don't know about you and the journey you've had?
I would say, a lot of people see my background now and they're like, oh my God, you've been so successful, or very, you're so accomplished and all of that. What they don't know is how much hard work has gone into it, and how much failure and rejection has gone into it along the way. Some not so great bosses along the way, some not so great learnings along the way. Sometimes thinking you wanted to be an HR. First of all, I wanted to be a journalist, right? A broadcast journalist, go cover wars. And then life's twists and turns later, and I was so miserable about it, went on to choose business as my way forward, wanted to then be an HR professional, didn't get through a school. I was devastated. How could I not get through an entrance exam in India? Yeah. And then that led me to then applying for Indian School of Business, which is where I did my business MBA. And that, I tell you, Fahad, was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the turning point of my entire career, my entire life, because that led me to Unilever. Unilever led me to Singapore. Singapore led me to my now husband, who's Indian American, lovely human being that I'm married to, with whom I moved here. And that started my American chapter. None of this would have happened had I taken the alternate path. So yeah, I would say a lot of people don't know how much rejection and failure has led to the success that they now see on their resume.
So then, kind of building off of that, what advice would you give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps?
I think and particularly as I meet a lot of the younger generation, and I've got 2 kids of my own, and I'm meeting their friends and so on and so forth. And I will tell you, it's the thing that my mom taught me, which is that there is no replacement for hard work in this world, right? Especially with AI and all the digital careers, everybody thinks that it's easy to make money, or I've got this gig economy and portfolio career and all of that. But when you actually meet those people who've been very successful at those careers, they work very hard. It's not easy. It seems easy. It seems glamorous. Oh, you're a content creator. Great. You're going to all these cool places. But think about all your vacations are creating content. And when content is your job, it's not fun after a while, right? So I think people forget that even what you see as glamorous life, even when it's content creation, even when it's AI projects and whatnot, it still takes a lot of grit. It still takes a lot of smarts, and there is no replacement for hard work in any job. At least I don't know anybody who hasn't been working hard and making their money. And I know
Yeah.
a fair amount of successful people.
Is there a moment you can think about actually early in your career when you were struggling, when you were going through a hard time, and
Yeah.
how did you go about getting past that?
Going back to the story of was brought up in a household where giving back was a very big part of how we were brought up. Community service and all of that was very important to our family and to my mom. Even to this day, she always finds a way to give back. Yeah. So I guess in a related way, I guess I wanted to be a journalist because I wanted to speak the stories of people who couldn't speak for themselves, particularly in war zones and areas and so on. And so when I took the route of business, right, so I felt that I had sold my soul to the dark side, and I felt that I was only working. I know it was pretty sad when it was happening. I was like, oh my God, my whole life boiled down to now simply making money and paying bills for myself. But actually, it wasn't true. I think once I launched my first launch on Suave at Unilever in 2010, I fell in love with what I do. And then I found that there are other ways to give back, which is what I now do, right? I have worked on brands that have purpose built, and I now create impact at scale, right? Like at Mesa, we had the Mesa Incubator and we were giving back to entrepreneurs. I've just joined a nonprofit board position at Global Justice Center where I'm helping these human rights activists who are helping and speaking for rights for women around the world, right? So I think I found my ways to give back. And so I think, but it took a few years of real soul searching and finding a way to combine my day job with my personal mission. And I would say that I'm so happy that it has worked out the way it has. I don't think that I would be a happy journalist. I don't think so. And I think I'm very happy for the pivot that happened. And I'm very grateful for the jobs that I have and the work that I get to do and the way that I create impact for people now.
What book, podcast, TV show, or otherwise that you've enjoyed recently do you recommend to folks listening?
I would go back to a classic. And the classic is The 7 Habits of Effective Leadership or Effective People. I'm reading that book again right now. And it's pretty interesting. And I'm sure you've done that experiment, when they show you the image of the young woman and the old woman, and it's the same image and it's the perspective. Some people see the young woman and some people see the old woman. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so several of us have done that in various business settings, right? And it's about the paradigm, right? It's what you see is how you view the life in a way, right? Like it's the worldview, it's the paradigm through which you view everything around you. So it talks a bit about paradigms that we are brought up with and where we center our lives today: work, spouse, entertainment, possession, money, fame, enemy, blah, blah, right? Like various ways that motivate us. But actually, all of those ways of living are actually not very fruitful because they all have flaws, except if you have a principles-based center, and that becomes your paradigm from which you view everything. So you become independent and interdependent all at once. So it's a pretty complex topic, but I've been like reading about it in very slow motion because I read 5 pages and I internalize and I think about it deeply in terms of what that means for leadership, right? Like how do you show up as a leader on brands that you run, but for the people and the teams that you run? Like what is your worldview and how do you create narratives around you and for you that, serve everyone overall?
If you had to distill that to then sort of one key takeaway, what would you say that is?
Know thyself, right?
Know thyself.
Know thyself, like know yourself. It's important, and it isn't easy because we've all grown up in various circumstances. Different things have shaped our memories and who we are as people. But it's almost about distancing yourself. And he speaks a lot about self-awareness and being able to almost like detach yourself from yourself and look at yourself and say, why are you making certain decisions? What in your life is leading you to that? Right. And finding those patterns and dismantling those patterns and saying, are these the patterns that align with your values, and principles with which you want to run your life? So it's a pretty interesting concept. It's not one that's easy to do. Sometimes you'd probably need help. I'm going to do it with my best friend. I'm sitting down. We're doing this together because he knows me best, and we're going to write it up.
Are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it. I'm scared of it, but we'll let's try, I guess.
It's not scary, I promise.
Yeah.
So there's just a few quick questions. So it's basically one quick answer, whatever comes to mind. It'll either be a prompt or I'll give you an option of like an A and B, and you just have to pick one.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump right in. Comedy or drama?
Drama.
Roller coasters or bumper cars?
Roller coasters.
Day or night?
Night, 100%.
City vacation or island vacation?
Could go either way. City vacation.
Okay.
I feel like you're judging me on the city vacation.
I'm not judging. I'm just thinking about it. I'm the same, actually. I'm the same. Breakfast, sweet or savory?
Neither. Green juice.
Neither? What? You can't pick neither. That's not one of the
Fine,
options.
savory.
Okay, well, that's it from me. Thanks for making the time to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Fahad.